A warm breeze stirred through Discovery Green, sending clusters of spring petals spiraling over the grass and weaving sunlight into the shadows beneath the live oaks. The city's heartbeat thrummed just beyond, the steady rush of traffic, the distant echo of laughter, dogs barking, kids sprinting in sneakers, their voices shrill and bright. Jacqueline Jackie Turner strolled along the gravel path, hands tucked in the pockets of her old faded jeans. Her mind set on nothing but the fresh air and the weightless relief of not having anywhere else to be. She watched a toddler try to chase a squirrel, giggling as his father swooped him up. An elderly couple sat feeding the ducks at the pond's edge. For a moment, everything felt simple, safe, almost like the world she remembered before the desert, before the army, before so many things she'd learned to hide behind a tight, polite smile. Then it happened. A commotion, sudden and sharp, as the crowd's noise splintered into a ripple of alarm. Heads turned. At first, Jackie caught only the movement, a black blur streaking across the open field, parting the daffodils, scattering pigeons. Her body reacted before her mind could process. She stopped mid-step, breath caught in her throat. The stallion crashed into view, a battered black horse, his mane wild and knotted, flanks flecked with old scars, one foreleg dragging with a limp. Children shrieked and scrambled away. Joggers paused, phones already up and recording. The horse's eyes were feverish, haunted, scanning the crowd as if searching for an enemy only he could see. The sun glinted off the dried mud caked on his coat, and for a split second, as he reared and snorted, Jackie saw not a wild animal, but a soldier under fire. Her vision tunneled. The park disappeared. For a heartbeat, she was back in Afghanistan, the heat, the gunfire, the metallic taste of adrenaline, and the dark horse surging beneath her. Zephyr, her cavalry partner, the only one who never flinched when the bombs fell. She snapped back. The stallion's nostrils flared, his muscles quivering as he fought the urge to bolt or attack. Was he dangerous? Was he terrified? Jackie stepped forward, years of muscle memory guiding her, her voice low, steady. "Hey, easy, boy!" The horse's ears flicked. He snorted, uncertain, then backed away, hooves gouging tracks in the grass. The crowd parted, unsure whether to intervene or flee. A new figure emerged, a man from the benches, tall but hunched, wearing layers of faded clothing. He limped too, one knee stiff, carrying a battered knapsack on his back. His beard was gray, tangled, but his eyes were sharp. "That's Legend," he called out, voice rough but not unkind. "Been with me a year." Legend? Jackie's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, staring at the horse like he might vanish if she blinked. The man, Frank, stepped between the onlookers, hands open to show he meant no harm. "It's okay, folks. He's not going to hurt anyone." But he watched the stallion with the wary affection of someone who knew how quickly things could change. Jackie found her voice barely more than a whisper. "Zephyr?" Frank shot her a look. Guarded, suspicious. "His name's Legend. He's mine." But the horse had stopped moving, frozen as if he recognized something in Jackie's scent, her posture, her very soul. She took another step, ignoring the warning glances from the crowd. "Zephyr," she tried, the old name breaking on her lips. "Is it you?" The stallion's ears perked, uncertain, a tremor running through his body. For one breathless moment, he stood between worlds, the wildness of the past and the tenuous safety of the present. The memory of war rippled through Jackie. She could almost feel the reins in her hand, the thunder of hooves on desert ground, the brotherhood forged in fire and fear. Frank stepped closer, his body angled protectively between the horse and the crowd. "Lady, you want to back off. He's scared, all right? Don't need any more trouble." But Jackie's heart refused to let go. "Where did you find him?" she pressed, voice shaky. "How did he end up here?" Frank hesitated, clearly debating whether to trust her. "Collapsed on a county road months ago, nearly dead. I patched him up. We've been together since." The admission carried a subtle warning. This horse was all he had. The air thickened with tension, onlookers waiting, the past crowding the present. Jackie's eyes burned. Was it really possible? The scars, the way he moved, even the wild look, so much like Zephyr. The horse's chest heaved, sides glistening with sweat. And then, for one heart-stopping second, Jackie took a risk. She spoke a single command, soft and foreign, a phrase in Pashto, words she'd used 1,000 times before, words Zephyr would know if he still remembered her. "Chal Zephyr," she murmured. The black stallion stilled, nostrils flaring. Then, slowly, with a halting grace, he lifted his left hoof and held it out, just as he'd been trained years ago. Gasps swept through the crowd, a few people dropping their phones in shock. Frank stared, his jaw tightening, suspicion mixing with fear. "How'd you know that?" he demanded. Jackie's vision blurred. "Because I was his rider," she said, fighting tears. "We survived things together you can't imagine. They told me he was gone, that he was retired. I never got to say goodbye." The standoff held. Jackie and Frank, legend and Zephyr, past and present colliding in a moment electric with hope and heartbreak. Finally, Frank relented, voice rough with vulnerability he couldn't hide. "Look, I can't lose him. He's all I got." His hand shook as he patted the stallion's neck. "But, maybe we can figure something out. I ain't heartless." Jackie nodded, swallowing the ache in her chest. "A week. Give me a week. Just to see if he's really—" Frank nodded once, eyes wary but resigned. "1 week. But I'm watching." As the sun slid behind the city skyline, painting the park in gold and shadow, Jackie reached out. The horse sniffed her palm, uncertain, then let her scratch the white star hidden beneath the mud on his brow. The past was no longer just memory. It had come pounding back, flesh and blood, battered but unbroken. And so the forgotten bond was forged anew, teetering on the edge of hope, sorrow, and something that might one day be healing. Night crept over Discovery Green, turning the spring afternoon's warmth into a restless hush. The city's energy dimmed, but for Jackie, the world was louder than ever, her mind filled with echoes and questions, the outline of legend's battered frame haunting her every thought. She couldn't sleep, barely ate. For 3 days, the memory of Zephyr, the impossible hope, crowded out everything else. When the sun rose on the 4th day of the trial, Jackie found herself driving down to the patch of land where Frank camped with legend under a crumbling freeway overpass, the city's forgotten borderland. Frank stood near a blue tarp, brewing coffee on a battered camping stove. Legend, no, Zephyr, Jackie insisted to herself, grazed in the dry weeds, his coat catching morning gold, eyes constantly darting, never fully at ease. The sight struck her. He was still the horse she'd known, proud, alert, but weighed down by a pain she recognized too well. She approached quietly. "Morning," she called, her voice carrying the weight of unslept nights. Frank nodded, regarding her over his chipped mug. "Didn't think you'd show." "I said a week," Jackie replied, keeping her tone gentle. "I keep my word." Frank grunted. "He's been edgy since yesterday. Got spooked by some teenagers. Almost broke loose." Jackie felt her heart clench. He always hated fireworks. Even the sound of a soda can popping made him bolt. The memory sharpened, and she forced herself to look away, to steady her breathing. Frank, I have to ask, did you ever check if he had any old markings, a brand, a chip? Frank frowned. Don't need a chip to know a horse's heart, he shot back. He's mine now. Jackie stepped closer to Legend, who flinched at her approach. She dropped to one knee, hands open, her voice dropping to a whisper, not to startle him. Hey, Zephyr, remember me? Remember how we'd ride out at dawn, the sand so white it blinded us both? The horse's ears twitched, uncertain, but he didn't bolt. Frank hovered, protective. He don't like strangers, ma'am. Don't like soldiers either, I noticed. That stung. Jackie straightened, dusting her knees. I wasn't just a soldier. I was his partner. We got out of hell together. She took a breath. Frank, let me tell you about Zephyr. Frank hesitated, wary but listening as he led Legend to a patch of shade. Jackie began, voice raw. Afghanistan, 2013. I was cavalry. Zephyr was trained for urban search, crowd control. He could sniff out explosives, calm a stampede, even carry wounded. They said he was too wild for anyone. But he listened to me. Maybe because we were both stubborn. Frank sipped his coffee, trying to mask his interest. So how'd he end up here? Jackie's jaw tightened. The Army retired a lot of the horses when our unit disbanded. Most were adopted out. Officers, ranchers, some went to therapy programs. I filed paperwork to bring Zephyr back with me. They said he got adopted, some fancy ranch. But then I got a letter. Said he'd been lost in transfer. Just gone. Like he never mattered. Frank's face softened, just a bit. That's rough. It's worse than rough, Jackie murmured. You spend years with a partner, trust him with your life, and then he's paperwork. A ghost. I never stopped looking. I still check rescue boards, auctions, whenever I can. For a while, silence settled between them. Only the distant sound of traffic overhead. Finally, Frank spoke. He was lying in the middle of County Road 24 last winter. Rain coming down hard. Most folks drove around him. I saw something in his eyes. Took me 3 hours, but I got him up, got him moving. We've been together since. I named him Legend. Figured he'd earned it. Jackie looked at Legend, at the way his eyes flicked toward every sound, his left hind leg stiff, scars old and new crossing his dark coat. He's been through hell, Frank. You both have. Frank bristled, suddenly defensive. I gave him a home. We watch each other's backs. That's more than I had for a long time. Jackie softened. I'm not here to take him away. I just need to know if he's really Zephyr. Frank stared at her for a long moment, the suspicion in his gaze melting to something more fragile. What makes you so sure? Jackie knelt, holding out a hand. There's a command only he knows. In Afghanistan, I taught him some Pashto phrases, our little secret. If he responds, you'll know he's mine. She murmured the phrase again. Chal, Zephyr. Legend shifted, muscles tense. Then, to Frank's amazement, the horse lifted his left hoof, holding it steady. A beat passed, and Jackie reached up, brushing the tangled mane aside to reveal a faint scar above his left eye. Her Zephyr's mark, earned when a mortar hit too close in Kandahar. Frank's hands trembled. I'll be damned. Jackie locked eyes with him. Frank, he remembers, and so do I. A silence fell, a hush heavy with old wounds and new understanding. Legend lowered his hoof, looking between the two humans, uncertain where he truly belonged. Frank rubbed his eyes, voice thick. I can't lose him. He's all I got. Jackie's heart twisted. I'm not here to take. I want to help him heal. Help you both if I can. Frank glanced at Legend, then at Jackie. 1 week, that's the deal. After that, we'll see. Jackie nodded, grateful for even that. I'll earn it, Frank. I promise. The rest of the day played out like a slow unburdening. Jackie lingered near Legend, watching his every move, how he shied from the sound of slamming car doors, how his eyes went dull whenever a siren blared in the distance. She saw herself reflected in his trauma, in the restless pacing, the flinches at sudden noises. Frank, at first hovering like a jealous brother, gradually relaxed. He told Jackie about the night raids on homeless camps, the police, the drunks, the weeks when food was scarce. Jackie listened, understanding more than she let on, her own scars running deep. By sunset, Jackie stood beneath the overpass, the city's sky growing bruised and blue. Legend stood beside her, close but never quite touching. She whispered a promise just for him. We're not done, you and me. Not by a long shot. Frank watched from his camp, rubbing the back of his neck. Don't know if this is a good idea, he muttered, but sometimes you just gotta trust what you see with your own eyes. As the first stars came out, Legend finally leaned against Jackie's shoulder, trembling but alive, the line between past and present beginning to blur. Two veterans, battered and barely holding on, standing in the half-light, each the last proof that the other had survived. Jackie's apartment sat on the second floor of an aging brick complex at the edge of Midtown, just close enough to the city's heart to catch distant sirens at midnight, just far enough to let the evenings settle into a fragile hush. The place was clean, tidy in the way that spoke of discipline, but cluttered at the edges by memories. Army medals gleamed from a shadow box above the fireplace, and a faded U.S. cavalry banner hung beside framed blue ribbons, their gold letters nearly rubbed away. Most prominent were the photos, sepia-toned, battered, some curling at the corners, of a younger Jackie astride a proud black stallion. Zephyr, always Zephyr. The first night of the trial week, Frank and Jackie walked Legend up the narrow back stairs. The stallion's eyes went wide at the creak of each step. He hesitated on the landing, snorting, his body tense as a drawn bow. Jackie coaxed him softly, palm up, murmuring old words, English and Pashto, whatever she could remember. Frank muttered, "He don't do indoors. Not since we found each other." Jackie nodded. She felt it too, the tightness in the chest, the urge to bolt for the open air. "We'll just try the yard," she said. The small patch of grass behind her building became Legend's sanctuary. Jackie laid out blankets, apples, and a shallow water tub. She camped beside him on a folding chair, a heavy army surplus jacket wrapped tight around her shoulders. The air held a sharp edge, the kind that always made her restless. Legend paced the fence line, pausing every few steps to glance at the glowing apartment window, nostrils flaring as he tried to understand this new world. Inside, Jackie moved quietly, as if afraid her own memories might break. She ran her fingers over the frame of her late husband's uniform, a relic that anchored her on the nights when the old terrors threatened to rise. On the mantel, next to a cracked snow globe from Kandahar, sat a single dog tag, Zephyr's, awarded to him the day he saved Jackie from a burning Humvee. That night, she tried sleeping inside, but the silence pressed in on her. She heard every scrape, every distant thud, a door slamming, a siren, the elevator humming like an approaching drone. At 2 a.m., she gave up, wrapped herself in her jacket, and sat beside Legend under the open sky. The horse was restless, his hooves shifting in the grass, head tossing at every flicker of headlights on the distant street. "You're not the only one who hates being boxed in," Jackie whispered, voice hoarse. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever feel safe inside four walls again." A crack of thunder rolled in from the horizon, and Legend startled, backing into the corner of the yard. Jackie stayed still, letting the storm move through him. She remembered nights in the desert, rain hammering down on tin roofs, the smell of wet sand and oil, the distant sound of mortars. Zephyr, Legend, had always pressed close to her in those moments, the only warmth in a world on fire. Slowly, Jackie pulled a bruised apple from her pocket. "You remember these?" she murmured, slicing off a piece with her old combat knife. Legend's ears twitched. He hesitated, then nudged her hand, lips brushing her palm as he took the fruit. For a second, their old trust flickered, fragile but real. The routine continued for days. Jackie would wake before sunrise, muscles stiff from sleeping upright, and find Legend standing a few feet away, eyes never fully closing. He circled the yard in the pre-dawn gloom, always alert, always ready to run. Jackie watched, her own nightmares mirrored in his every movement. One morning, she carried a bucket of oats out just as the sun cracked the horizon. Legend started at the sound, but didn't run. Jackie set the bucket down and sat on the damp grass, pulling her knees to her chest. "I used to talk to you about everything," she said, staring at her reflection in his deep, wary eyes. "About missions, about home, about the things I missed and the things I wished I could forget." She talked, and Legend listened, each word a thread weaving the torn fabric of their old bond. She told him about her husband's death, how she'd gotten the letter on a night that never seemed to end, how she'd almost quit the army, but Zephyr's steady presence had kept her going. She confessed the guilt, the anger, the hollow ache that no medal could ever fill. Legend's tail flicked, his head dropping low, and for a heartbeat Jackie thought she saw understanding in his gaze. She pressed her cheek to his neck, smelling dust and sweat and rain. "You saved me more times than I'll ever admit," she whispered. That night, a stronger storm swept in. Rain battered the roof, lightning split the sky, so Jackie sat outside again, wrapped in a wool blanket, shivering. Legend stood beside her, shuddering at each crash, but this time he didn't bolt. Instead, he pressed his muzzle against her arm, anchoring both of them. Jackie let herself cry, silent tears mingling with rain. She didn't know if she was comforting him or if he was saving her, just as he had all those years ago. Sometime before dawn, exhaustion dragged Jackie under. She drifted off in her chair, the storm fading to a gentle patter. When she woke, Legend was still there, head bowed, keeping silent vigil. Sunlight streaked across the yard, gilding them both in fragile hope. Frank appeared at the fence, 2 steaming coffees in hand. "Didn't sleep, did you?" he said, not unkind. Jackie shook her head. Neither did he. Frank passed her a cup, then crouched to scratch Legend's neck. "He trusts you," he said quietly. "Took him months to stand that close to me. Whatever you had before, it's still there, under all the scars." Jackie nodded, fighting a lump in her throat. She looked at her battered hands, then at the faded photograph of herself and Zephyr tucked into her wallet. He's not the only one learning to trust again. Later, inside the apartment, Jackie lingered before the photos, her past life watching her from every wall. She took down the shadow box, cradling Zephyr's blue ribbon, fingers trembling. "We both came home broken," she whispered, "but maybe we don't have to stay that way." Legend, restless, nudged the patio door with his nose. Jackie smiled, sliding it open so he could see the sky. For the first time in years, the apartment felt a little less haunted, a little more like a place where healing might begin. The week was only halfway over, but something inside Jackie had shifted. With each night spent beneath the uncertain stars, each apple shared, each quiet hour standing guard against their ghosts, the bond between horse and soldier grew stronger. Two lost souls beginning to believe, just barely, that they might find a way home again. Dawn broke soft and silver across Houston, dew sparkling on the grass behind Jackie's apartment. She stood at the edge of her tiny backyard, lead rope in hand, heart thumping with hope and fear. Legend stood nearby, ears flicking at the city waking up. Garbage trucks grumbling in the alley, an early jogger's footsteps crunching past. He was still skittish, still haunted, but each night had brought them closer. The gentle brush of his muzzle, the way he sometimes stood guard by her chair until morning light. Today was the day she would try something more. Jackie knew from years of riding and years of therapy that healing wasn't about sudden leaps, but inch-by-inch courage. She spoke softly as she approached. "Let's try a new routine, buddy. Just you and me." She slipped the soft halter over his head, careful not to rush, feeling his tension in her fingertips. Legend tensed, the old fight-or-flight flickering in his dark eyes. Jackie breathed slow, steady. "It's just me, Zephyr. We're safe here." She stroked his neck, felt the scar above his left eye, the map of old wounds across his shoulders. "Let's walk a little. Remember how we used to greet the sun?" Frank watched from a folding chair near the fence, steaming mug in hand. He looked tired but hopeful, his walls not as high as they'd once been. "He'll follow you," Frank called quietly. He always did like the mornings best. Jackie led Legend through the gate, out to the boardwalk running beside the bayou. The world felt fresh, humming with life. Ducks paddling, sunlight catching on the water, the city distant and muted. Legend hesitated at first, hooves scraping the pavement, nostrils flaring at every sudden sound. Jackie didn't push. She matched her breath to his, her pace slow, patient. Every few steps she'd pause, letting him sniff a patch of wild clover or watch a heron launch into the sky. She whispered stories from their past, gentle reminders of the trust they'd built in far harsher places. "Remember Afghanistan? The endless heat, the sand in your mane, the way you'd nudge me if I got too quiet. I'm here, Zephyr. I'm still here." At a quiet bend in the path, Legend stopped. Jackie waited, heart hammering, not daring to reach for him. Slowly, Legend took a step forward, then another, his body relaxing by degrees. Jackie felt the old magic stir, the language of patience, of silent promises, of loyalty that outlasts even memory. As they walked, Jackie talked. She confessed her guilt, her nightmares, her deepest fear, that she'd failed him, left him behind, that maybe he'd never forgive her. "I always thought I failed you, Zephyr," she said, her voice trembling. "I let them take you. I let them call you're tired, like you were just equipment. I never stopped looking, but—" Her voice broke. "But maybe you thought I did." Legend stopped, turning his head to nuzzle her shoulder. Jackie froze, tears burning her eyes. "It's okay," she whispered, rubbing his cheek. "I'm here now. I won't leave you again." A family out for a morning walk paused to watch. The little girl tugged her mother's sleeve, pointing at the horse. "Look, Mama, he's like a knight's horse." The mother smiled, snapping a picture. Jackie managed a small wave, pride and sorrow twisting in her chest. Legend let the girl approach, allowed her to pet his neck for a moment before shying away. It was a victory, a fragile sign that the world was safe, even if just for a heartbeat. They looped back toward the apartment. Jackie feeling the weight in her shoulders lift just a bit. Back in the yard, she groomed Legend in the soft light, running the curry comb through his tangled mane. She hummed a tune from her childhood, the rhythm steady and soothing. Sada Legend closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. As she brushed, her fingers caught on something hard, knotted deep in the horse's mane. Frowning, Jackie worked gently to untangle it, her heart beating faster as the object came free. A tarnished, faded metal, its ribbon twisted with mud and hair. Jackie stared, breathless. The cavalry insignia was unmistakable. Her hands trembled as she read the faint engraving. For service and courage, Zephyr. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You kept it," she whispered. "After all this time, you kept it." Legend pressed his head against her chest, as if to say he remembered everything. Frank wandered over, curious. "What's that you got?" Jackie held up the medal. "Proof," she said, her voice thick. "He's really Zephyr, my Zephyr." Frank stared, then let out a slow breath. Guess there's no more denying it. For a long while they stood together, soldier, horse, and wanderer, bound by something deeper than ownership or even rescue. Jackie felt her heart ache with joy and grief all at once. But the day wasn't done. Jackie led Legend back inside the yard, where he grazed peacefully, more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. She brewed coffee for herself and Frank. They sat side by side, watching Legend in the morning light. Frank finally broke the silence. "He's yours, you know. Always was. I just borrowed him for a little while." Jackie shook her head, smiling through tears. "He's ours. He saved us both." The words hung between them, honest and healing. The world felt different now, less haunted, less heavy. Legend wandered over, nuzzled Jackie's hand, and then Frank's, as if blessing their fragile alliance. That night, Jackie couldn't sleep. She sat by the window watching the city lights blink on and off, feeling the weight of the metal in her palm. She thought of all the soldiers, human and animal, who'd come home broken, forgotten, discarded. She vowed, again, that Legend's story wouldn't end that way, not if she had anything to say about it. The next morning, Legend was waiting at the gate, eyes bright, head high. Jackie clipped on the lead rope, smiling. "Ready to see what tomorrow brings?" Legend stamped his hoof, eager for whatever came next. Their healing was not a straight line. It was a winding path, marked by setbacks and small victories, by apples shared at dawn and silent comfort beneath a stormy sky. But with every step, every gentle touch, Jackie and Legend rebuilt the bond war had tried to shatter. Trust, she realized, was the greatest lead rope of all. Fragile, yes, but stronger than fear, stronger even than memory. And for the first time in years, Jackie believed they might just make it home. It was Saturday morning, Houston waking with the sizzle of spring. In Midtown, the streets pulsed with weekend energy, families crowding open-air markets, cyclists darting past with laughter in their wake, city buses rumbling through puddles from last night's rain. Jackie had planned this day all week, a test for both her and Legend. They'd conquered the backyard, then the boardwalk by the bayou. Now she wanted to see if Legend could handle the city itself. Jackie saddled Legend in the soft light of dawn, fingers moving with care and ritual, checking every buckle and strap. She felt her nerves in her stomach, but tried to project calm. "We'll go slow," she promised, stroking his neck. Frank handed her a battered high-visibility vest and a piece of homemade cardboard with "Veteran and Rescue Horse, Say Hi," scrawled in big black letters. Jackie laughed, grateful for his presence. "You're coming too," she said, and Frank didn't argue. They set off at a gentle walk, Jackie leading Legend with a loose rein, Frank walking on the other side. Traffic honked in the distance. A street musician played blues on the corner. People stared, some with curiosity, others snapping photos. Jackie saw the questions in their eyes. What's a horse doing here? Is this safe? She met their gazes with a steady nod, her posture upright, her pride shining through. They passed a group of children playing hopscotch on the cracked sidewalk. One girl, no older than 8, tugged her mother's sleeve, eyes wide as Legend passed. "Mama, look! A real war horse!" The mother knelt, asking Jackie if they could pet him. Jackie knelt too, inviting the child closer. Legend's ears flicked, but he stood steady, letting the girl stroke his cheek. "He's a hero, you know," Jackie told her softly. "Just like our soldiers." The mother smiled, tears in her eyes, and snapped a photo. The walk grew easier as they moved into the heart of Midtown. Jackie felt her anxiety ebb with every block. Legend walked calmly, head high, stopping to sniff flowers from a street vendor, even letting a teenager drape a strand of Mardi Gras beads over his neck. "He looks like he's seen everything," the boy said. Jackie smiled, thinking, "You have no idea." They turned down an avenue where the sidewalk opened up into a pocket park. Dogs barked, a toddler's ball bounced into the street, chased by a small boy with bright yellow sneakers. In that one split-second moment, the city's cheerful chaos shattered because the boy didn't see the car coming. Jackie's body reacted before her mind. "No!" she shouted, but the car was almost on the child. Horn blaring, tires screeching. Legend moved in a blur, muscle, memory, pure instinct. He lunged, hooves pounding the pavement, wedging his massive frame between the child and the oncoming car. The impact was sickening. The car clipped Legend's flank, sending him spinning, and the boy tumbled to the curb, unhurt but terrified. Screams erupted. The mother shrieked, racing to scoop her son into her arms. The car screeched to a halt, the driver jumping out, hands shaking. "Oh my God, is he okay? Is he okay?" people cried. Jackie was already at Legend's side, falling to her knees in the street, hands flying over his body. Blood oozed from a deep gash on his left hip, staining his dark coat. "It's okay, buddy. I'm here," she whispered, fighting the tremor in her voice. She pressed her jacket against the wound, willing herself not to panic. The crowd circled, phones out, filming, some calling 911. The little boy's mother dropped to her knees beside Jackie, tears streaming down her face. "He saved my child," she sobbed. "He saved him." Frank tried to keep the crowd back, his old voice fierce. "Give him space, he needs air!" Sirens blared as an ambulance and animal control van screeched up. A paramedic rushed to check on the boy. Miraculously, he was only shaken and scared. But Legend's injury was serious. Jackie's hands were slick with blood. She pressed harder, whispering the old words from Afghanistan. "Hold on, Zephyr. Don't you dare leave me now. Not after everything." The animal control officer, a young woman with kind eyes, took one look at Legend and called for a special equine unit. "We'll get him to the hospital," she promised. "Just keep talking to him." Frank helped hoist Jackie up as they carefully loaded Legend into the trailer, sirens clearing the path. Jackie never let go of his mane, riding beside him the entire way. "You're a hero, Zephyr," she whispered. "Just like always." At the equine hospital, chaos reigned. Veterinarians and techs swarmed Legend, checking his vitals, cleaning the wound. Jackie refused to leave his side, gripping his hoof as they stitched the gash. She blocked out the fluorescent lights, the beeping machines, the shouts. Her focus was on Legend's breathing, the rise and fall of his chest. "Stay with me," she begged. You're not alone. The surgery dragged on for hours. Frank paced the waiting room, fielding calls from the animal control officer, the little boy's mother, even a local news channel. Word had already started to spread. Someone's video from the scene had gone viral, the footage of a warhorse saving a child racing through social media. Hashtags trended. #legend the hero, #veterans horse, #not all heroes are human. When the vet finally emerged, scrubs splattered with blood. Jackie's heart seized. "He's stable," the vet said. "He's tough. You did everything right. Now we wait." Jackie sat by Legend's stall, refusing to move. She talked to him through the night. Stories from the cavalry, tales of lost friends and found courage, whispered prayers. Frank brought her coffee, blankets, news from the outside world. "You're a celebrity now," he said, voice gruff with emotion. "Everyone's talking about the hero horse who saved that kid." Journalists began calling, then arriving in person. The hospital had to post guards at the stable doors. Flowers, cards, and toys for Legend appeared on the fence outside. Messages from grateful strangers, veterans, parents, children. Jackie read each one aloud, tears falling freely. "You did good, Zephyr," she murmured. "You did real good." Days passed. Legend's strength returned, his wound healing faster than anyone thought possible. Jackie stayed by his side, sleeping in the straw, letting the world's love wash over them both. The video of his bravery played on national news, and offers to help poured in. Money for his care, volunteers for Frank, people asking if they could adopt other rescue horses like Legend. One afternoon, a package arrived. Inside, a brand new cavalry medal, engraved with Legend's and Jackie's names, and a note from the little boy's mother. "You are the reason my son is alive. You are both heroes." Jackie pressed the medal to her heart. Legend, still groggy from his injuries, nudged her with his muzzle, as if to say, "We're in this together." And for the first time since the war, Jackie felt hope, raw and brilliant, the kind that refuses to die. She knew the world could be cruel, but it could be good too. As long as Legend was beside her, she was ready for whatever came next. The spring sunlight filtered through the hospital windows, glinting off steel instruments and casting long shadows across the straw. Jackie barely slept, her body curled against the straw just outside Legend's stall. The faint sounds of the city, a distant siren, the rumble of trucks, seemed far away, like echoes from another life. Every morning, Legend would wake her with a gentle nudge, his breath warm against her hair, as if reminding her that they were both, somehow, still here. The media circus hadn't died down. If anything, it grew bigger. Cameras lined the sidewalk outside the equine hospital, news vans double-parked beside volunteers with Save Legend signs. Cards, gifts, and even a homemade quilt bearing a patchwork of cavalry insignias appeared, sent by strangers moved by the video of Legend's rescue. At first, Jackie felt overwhelmed by the attention, but she understood the world needed a story of hope, and Legend, battered but standing, had become a living symbol of it. It wasn't long before the attention attracted people from the past. On the third day, as Jackie brushed Legend's mane, a woman with a press badge and a determined gait strode into the hospital, a camera bag slung over her shoulder. Jackie recognized her instantly. Ellie Morgan, a journalist who had once embedded with her unit in Afghanistan. Ellie's brown hair was streaked with gray, but her eyes were just as sharp as ever. "Jackie Turner, as I live and breathe," Ellie said with a wry grin, arms wide. Jackie blinked in surprise, then smiled for the first time in days. "Ellie, what are you doing here?" Ellie hugged her tight, then nodded at the stall. "I heard about Legend, saw the video, Had to see for myself. Jackie stepped aside so Ellie could get a closer look at Legend. The stallion raised his head, eyeing Ellie with mild suspicion, but didn't flinch. "He remembers you," Jackie said quietly. "You used to sneak him sugar cubes when nobody was looking." Ellie laughed, reaching into her pocket for a treat. Legend nuzzled her hand, his lips gentle as he took the sugar cube. "Always a good judge of character," Ellie murmured. The reunion felt like a balm, a piece of the old world returning just when Jackie needed it most. Over coffee in the waiting room, Ellie laid out her plan. "Jackie, I'm not just here to write a feel-good story. I want the truth, the whole truth, about what happened to Zephyr and the other service animals. I've heard rumors. Horses being auctioned off, records going missing. I want to dig." Jackie's chest tightened. "I tried to bring Zephyr home. The army said he was retired, then gone. I always suspected something was wrong, but I never had proof." Ellie nodded. "All business now." "Let me help. If there's a trail, I'll find it." The next days blurred in a whirl of recovery, research, and renewed purpose. Ellie worked her sources, calling in old favors. She pulled military records, government memos, anything she could get her hands on. Jackie offered details only a cavalry soldier would know. Serial numbers, deployment dates, the names of handlers and horses that vanished after retirement. One evening, Ellie arrived at the hospital with a stack of files and a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "Jackie, look at this. The military kept digital records on every animal. I found paperwork for Zephyr, except it doesn't end with retired. There's a second file, redacted, marked transferred for sale. And not just him, a whole roster of service animals." Jackie's blood ran cold. "They auctioned them off? After everything they gave?" Ellie nodded grimly. "And it gets worse. The auction house involved has ties to several high-ranking military contractors. Some of these animals ended up at rodeos, others at slaughterhouses. It's a scandal, if we can prove it." The two women worked late into the night, piecing together Zephyr's journey. Frank joined them, adding his own observations, where he'd found Legend, the scars, the brands. Jackie scoured Legend's coat, searching for clues. That's when she found it. A faded tattoo inside Legend's upper lip. A number that matched Zephyr's service records. Even deeper, embedded near his neck, was a microchip. Long dormant, but still scannable. A friendly vet confirmed the number. Zephyr, U.S. Cavalry, Afghanistan. Jackie let out a shaky breath, tears prickling her eyes. "He never stopped being my partner. They just tried to erase him." Ellie hugged her tight, then got to work. "We have enough for a story. And not just any story, a reckoning." But the discoveries didn't come without danger. One night, as the hospital settled into uneasy quiet, Jackie took a walk outside to clear her head. A black SUV idled at the edge of the parking lot. Its windows were tinted, engine running. Jackie's old instincts flared. She watched as a man stepped out, glancing her way. He didn't speak, just dropped an envelope on the ground and drove off. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. "Drop the story, Turner. You don't know who you're dealing with." Jackie felt the old anxiety rise, but this time she wasn't alone. She showed the letter to Ellie and Frank. Ellie just set her jaw. "They're scared. That means we're on the right track." The alliance between them grew stronger. Jackie, Ellie, and Frank became an unlikely team. Soldier, reporter, and survivor, united by Legend's story and a hunger for justice. They made a pact. No more secrets, no more running. If the world wanted a hero, they'd give it one, and they'd make sure the truth couldn't be buried again. Meanwhile, Legend's recovery was a marvel. He regained his strength faster than any vet expected, stubborn and spirited. Jackie took him on short walks, then longer ones, building his confidence. He responded to her touch, to her voice, to the familiar commands she thought she'd lost. The old trust was returning, forged anew in the fire of crisis. Ellie filmed every moment. Legend's healing, Jackie's devotion, Frank's quiet bravery. "People need to see this," she said, setting up her camera. "They need to know that courage isn't just what happens on the battlefield." By the week's end, Legend was well enough to return home. The hospital held a small send-off, vets and staff lining up to pet his nose or slip him treats. Jackie led him out into the sunlight, feeling the weight of his story settle on her shoulders. A burden, yes, but also a gift. On the drive home, Jackie looked at Ellie and Frank. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about every forgotten animal, every broken soldier, every second chance." Frank nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Let's finish what we started." They had no way of knowing the dangers still lurking, or the battles ahead. But together, united by truth, loyalty, and the courage to keep fighting, they stepped into the fire again, ready to bring the whole system down if they had to. And Legend, head high, scars shining in the sun, walked beside them. Not just a symbol, but a survivor. A hero reborn. The first night Legend was home from the hospital, Jackie barely slept. Rain beat against her window, shadows flickered across the walls, and every sound, the screech of tires, the rumble of thunder, set her nerves on edge. She tried to relax, sitting with a cup of cold tea in her lap, but her mind churned with worry. The hospital threats and the dark SUV had reminded her that their fight was far from over. In the yard, Legend paced restlessly, still limping but stubbornly upright. He flinched at distant thunder and seemed smaller somehow, like a soldier bracing for the next attack. By dawn, Jackie had made up her mind. She wouldn't hide, and she wouldn't let Legend hide either. With trembling hands, she slipped on her raincoat and boots and walked outside. "It's just another storm, buddy," she whispered, running her hand down Legend's neck. "We've survived worse." He pressed his muzzle into her shoulder, shivering, and Jackie understood. His old traumas were resurfacing, and so were hers. They spent the day together, quiet but determined. Jackie cleaned out the small barn behind her apartment, a space she'd let gather dust since before Legend returned. She swept every corner, hung blankets, laid out fresh hay, and tacked up old photos of their cavalry days. She wanted the barn to feel like a safe haven, not a prison. Legend stepped inside reluctantly, muscles tight, but Jackie's presence soothed him. "We'll take it slow," she promised, sitting with him on the straw while rain drummed the tin roof. But that night, danger crept closer. Jackie returned from the store to find the barn door swinging wide in the wind, the latch broken. Her heart pounded as she ran inside. Legend was wild-eyed, sides heaving, sweat darkening his coat. Around the barn, things were scattered. Grooming brushes tossed, hay trampled, a window cracked. Someone had been here. Pinned to the barn door with a pocket knife was a sheet of notebook paper. "Stop digging. Next time the horse gets it." Jackie's hands shook with fury and fear. She tore the note down and scanned the street, but whoever had come was long gone. Legend pressed himself against the far wall, trembling so violently his knees threatened to buckle. For a moment, Jackie just held him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, stroking his mane. "I never wanted to put you in danger." Ellie and Frank rushed over when Jackie called. Ellie's jaw clenched as she read the note, They're scared because they're guilty, she said, voice like steel. We're too close for comfort. Frank stomped around the barn, muttering curses and checking for tracks in the mud. Low-life cowards, he spat. Picking on an animal. Not on my watch. The next few days were a blur of anxiety. Legend refused to eat, turning away from his oats and water. He startled at every sound, car alarms, barking dogs, the distant crackle of fireworks. Jackie did everything she could. She slept in the barn, read old stories aloud, even tried their old cavalry routines to bring some comfort. But Legend's trauma was raw. He wouldn't even let Jackie put a halter on him without shying away, his whole body quivering with remembered fear. Jackie understood more than she cared to admit. The old nightmares came roaring back. Gunfire, smoke, the faces of comrades lost in the sand. She found herself pacing the apartment, snapping at Frank, unable to eat or rest. The sense of helplessness pressed on her chest until she could barely breathe. One night, as Legend stood shivering in the corner, Jackie pulled her late husband's army jacket from the closet and wrapped it around her shoulders. She sat down on the straw, her back to the barn wall, and began to talk, not as a trainer or a soldier, but as someone broken too. I know what it's like to be scared, she whispered, to feel like the world's out to get you, to lose everything and not know who you are anymore. But you're not alone. I'm here. I promise. I'm not going anywhere. The words spilled out. Stories of their time in Afghanistan, memories of midnight rides, the pain of losing friends, the guilt she'd carried since Zephyr vanished. She told Legend how she'd spent years trying to outrun her own ghosts. But you saved me, you know? She whispered, stroking his forehead. Even now you're saving me. Legend's shivering slowed. He moved closer, finally settling his great head in Jackie's lap. She stroked his ears until his breathing eased, and for the first time in days, they both slept. Two survivors leaning on each other, building a fragile peace out of fear and love. Meanwhile, Ellie threw herself into her investigation, determined to get to the bottom of the threats. She tracked down old military contacts, made calls at all hours, and spent her nights hunched over her laptop, piecing together records. Her persistence paid off when she found a lead. The auction house that handled retired military horses had direct contracts with a defense logistics company known for shady dealings. Financial records showed money changing hands under the table, and anonymous tipsters hinted that horses who didn't sell were quietly disposed of. No questions asked. Ellie confronted Jackie with the news. They're desperate to keep this quiet, but the evidence is there. If we go public, it's going to blow up. Jackie nodded, her resolve sharpening. Let them come. We've got the truth, and we've got each other. Frank added, and I've got my old Louisville slugger if anybody tries coming around again. They upped their security, Frank sleeping in the barn with Legend, Jackie setting up cameras, Ellie checking in every hour. But the tension remained, coiling through every conversation, every uneasy silence. Jackie caught herself staring at the barn door late at night, half expecting it to swing open on its own. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Ellie ran up the path, her phone buzzing in her hand. It's happening, she cried. The State Animal Welfare Board just opened an inquiry into the auction house. Our footage, Legend's story, it's catching fire online. People want answers. A surge of hope swept through the little group. Jackie hugged Ellie, tears of relief in her eyes. Maybe now, someone will finally listen. Frank, watching Legend nuzzle into Jackie's hand, just nodded, pride and worry fighting for space on his face. As dusk settled, Jackie sat with Legend beneath the stars, feeling the old scars inside her ache and tingle. She whispered, "No one will take you again. Not while I'm breathing." Legend seemed to understand. He pressed close, eyes calm, the tremors finally quieted. For tonight, at least, they were safe. For tonight, hope was enough. But Jackie knew the fight wasn't over. The threats were real, the danger still close. Yet with Ellie's determination, Frank's loyalty, and Legend's unbreakable spirit, Jackie felt something she hadn't in years. Courage. The kind that rises from ruin, that refuses to give in to fear. The kind that, against all odds, just might change everything. By the time the sun broke through the storm clouds on Monday, Legend's story had already begun to sweep across the internet like wildfire. Ellie sat hunched over her laptop at Jackie's kitchen table, editing together clips for her exposé. Legend's heroic rescue, scenes of his battered body healing, and the now infamous footage from the night the barn was ransacked. She layered these images with raw, shaky cell phone videos of Jackie and Legend in Afghanistan, riding through smoke and sand, metals glinting in the heat. Her voiceover, measured and resolute, tied every piece together. This is not just a horse's story. It's a story about how we honor or betray our bravest souls, animal and human alike. As the video uploaded, Jackie's phone buzzed with messages. Veterans sharing memories, animal lovers offering donations, strangers begging for ways to help. Frank fielded calls from rescue groups and TV stations, growing gruff and embarrassed at the sudden attention. Even Legend seemed aware that something monumental was happening. He paced less, eyes brighter, scars softening as he stood quietly with Jackie beneath the live oaks, soaking up her affection. Within hours, Ellie's video, Legend the Lost Cavalry Horse, exploded online. It was shared by animal rescue networks, military veterans associations, and celebrities who'd never met Jackie or Legend, but wept openly on camera at the bond between horse and soldier. Comments poured in by the thousands, some reliving old war stories, others describing the rescue of abandoned animals, all asking what could be done to stop the cruelty hidden behind the word retirement. The outcry was immediate and fierce. Hashtags trended nationwide. #Justice for Legend. #No More Forgotten. #Service Never Ends. The local news picked up the story, then the national morning shows. By Tuesday, Jackie and Legend had become symbols, standing at the intersection of America's love for its veterans and its animals, refusing to be erased. On Wednesday, everything changed. Jackie received a call from State Representative Amy Contreras, a woman whose own brother had served with the cavalry. "Miss Turner, your story has moved the legislature. We'd like you to come speak at a special hearing on the treatment of retired service animals. We want to fix this." Jackie's breath caught. "Of course, ma'am. Legend and I will be there." The next morning, Houston City Hall overflowed with supporters. Veterans in uniform, families with rescue dogs, animal welfare advocates, and news crews clustering on the steps. Jackie arrived with Ellie and Frank, her hands shaking but her chin high. Legend trotted beside her, coat gleaming, cavalry medal knotted in his mane, as calm and proud as he'd ever been in Afghanistan. Inside, the mood was electric. People waved signs, "Service never ends, honor our animals, not forgotten." Ellie filmed everything, the crowd's rising chant, the faces lit with hope and anger, Legend's solemn poise as he entered the hearing chamber. State officials, their expressions grave, nodded as Jackie spoke. Her voice was steady, every word carrying years of pain and purpose. "My name is Jacqueline Turner. I'm a veteran. Legend was my partner in combat. He saved lives, risked his own, and when we came home, he was supposed to be safe. Instead, he disappeared, abandoned, auctioned off, almost lost forever." This is not just my story. It's the story of every animal who served, and every human who's ever depended on them. We owe them dignity. We owe them a future. She described the night of the barn attack, the threats, the fear that had taken root in her own home. I know what trauma looks like. I see it in Legend every day. He flinches at loud noises, wakes sweating from nightmares, just like I do. Animals carry our burdens, our scars. They deserve better than this. When she finished, silence hung in the air. Then, one by one, other veterans stood to share their stories. Dogs who sniffed out bombs, horses who carried wounded soldiers to safety, each animal a silent hero. The room swelled with emotion. Legend stood by Jackie's side the entire time, his head lowered, a living reminder of the bond that endures long after uniforms are packed away. Outside, the rally was in full swing. Ellie streamed live as supporters filled the plaza, some holding photos of their own service animals, others offering to adopt or sponsor the ones who'd been forgotten. Frank, a quiet pillar in the chaos, wiped his eyes as he saw strangers petting Legend, whispering thanks. Ellie's expose had already prompted state and national leaders to call for change. "We're launching an investigation into the illegal auctioning of military animals," announced the governor. "We are working with Congress to pass new laws protecting them." News outlets ran the headline, "Hero Horse Sparks Nationwide Outcry. Will Laws Change?" At sunset, Jackie and Legend returned home. She sat beside him on the porch, exhaustion pulling at her bones. The world felt heavy, but for the first time in years, she sensed the weight was being shared by thousands. She brushed Legend's mane, letting the sounds of the city wash over them. Horns, laughter, cheers in the distance. She leaned into his shoulder, whispering, "You did it, Zephyr. You started something bigger than both of us." Frank joined them, handing over a mug of coffee. "You know, I never thought I'd see the day people cared this much," he said, voice thick. "But you gave them something to believe in," Ellie called from inside, her phone glowing with updates. "Jackie, you've got messages from Washington, Sacramento, Austin. Everyone wants to talk. They want you and Legend at the Capitol next week." Jackie closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the ripple effect of one horse's courage, the resilience of a few determined friends, and the unstoppable power of truth going public. She knew there would still be battles ahead, political pushback, more threats, and the long road of healing for her, for Legend, and for all the forgotten souls just like them. But that night, as she sat beneath the stars, Legend's head resting in her lap, she allowed herself something rare and precious, hope. Hope that the world, when faced with injustice, could rise up and demand something better. Hope that their story would save not just one, but many. Hope that service, real service, never truly ends. The internet kept buzzing, the news kept spreading, but in Jackie's backyard, beneath the Texas sky, all was quiet except for the slow, steady breathing of a hero finally at peace. The Texas State House was busier than Jackie had ever seen it. Television vans crowded the steps. Lines of veterans, animal advocates, and curious citizens snaked around the block. Reporters in crisp suits jostled for space alongside high schoolers waving cardboard signs, "Honor their service, never again forgotten, justice for Legend." Jackie tried to focus on the details. Legend's freshly brushed mane, the way her shoes pinched, the weight of Zephyr's faded metal in her pocket. But her heart raced as if she were back in a battlefield tent, bracing for orders. Ellie walked beside her, calm and sharp-eyed, her phone buzzing with updates. Frank hovered near Legend, whose calm, steady presence seemed to comfort not only Jackie, but half the crowd gathered at the hearing. Legend's injuries had healed, leaving only a faint patch of white on his hip, a living reminder of all he'd survived. Inside the marble corridors, the mood was electric and somber all at once. Jackie was ushered into a high-ceilinged chamber lined with wood paneling, the state seal gleaming above the dais. Legislators and officials sat in rows, some with military ribbons pinned to their lapels. There were cameras everywhere, red lights blinking. Every word, every gesture would be broadcast live across the country. Jackie took a shaky breath as her name was called. She rose, feeling the eyes of the world on her, and walked to the microphone with Legend at her side. The room hushed. She glanced down at Zephyr's medal, her voice steady but raw. "My name is Jacqueline Turner. I served with the U.S. cavalry in Afghanistan. My partner, Zephyr, who you all know as Legend, was more than just a horse. He was a soldier, a friend, and a lifeline when the world went dark." She paused, the memory of sand and smoke flickering behind her eyes. "He risked his life alongside me. He saved children, found wounded men, never flinched when others ran. And when I came home, I thought he was safe too. I trusted that our country would honor his service." Her voice shook now, rising with old pain. "But the truth is, our service animals are too often abandoned, sold off like broken tools, discarded, forgotten. I spent years searching for Zephyr. He survived horrors I'll never know, abuse, neglect, betrayal, until by some miracle we found each other again." Jackie gripped the medal tighter, holding it up for all to see. This medal was supposed to mean something. It was supposed to say, "You mattered, you served, you will not be forgotten." But medals aren't enough. We need laws, we need oversight. We need to remember that loyalty, whether it walks on 2 legs or 4, never stops being sacred. As she spoke, a hush fell over the room. Even the most jaded lawmakers seemed moved, some blinking back tears. Legend stood beside Jackie, tall and steady, his head held high. Every so often he brushed her arm with his muzzle, grounding her in the moment. Other veterans spoke too, some breaking down as they recounted how their dogs or horses had kept them alive, both during war and after. A Gold Star mother told the story of her son's service dog, who now visited wounded children in hospitals. A retired officer described the moment his therapy horse helped him find the will to live again. One by one, they built a chorus of voices impossible to ignore. Ellie filmed everything, her camera capturing the raw, unfiltered emotion. The story played out on national news, streaming live across every screen. Tweets and hashtags surged. #ProtectOurPartners, #Zephyr'sLaw, #LegendLives. After the testimonies, state officials debated, then called for a historic vote. Cameras flashed as they passed a sweeping new law. All military and service animals, upon retirement, would be offered for adoption to their handlers or reputable sanctuaries. Strict oversight and funding for veterinary care and therapy programs would be required. The days of lost in transfer were officially over. The national impact was immediate. Other states picked up the legislation. Congress debated a federal version. Foundations pledged millions for animal therapy centers for veterans. Animal shelters launched second chance service programs. The faces of Jackie and Legend, veteran and horse united, became symbols on posters and websites nationwide. But victories came with a cost. Jackie felt the toll deep in her bones. The endless interviews, the late-night threats, the anxiety for Legend's safety. They left scars almost as deep as any she'd carried from war. The media attention was overwhelming. Strangers camped outside her apartment, and angry voices online tried to twist her story for their own agendas. Sometimes Jackie wondered if she'd unleashed something too big, if all this exposure was worth the price. Legend, too, felt the strain. Crowds exhausted him. At times, he shied away from flashbulbs, shaking so badly Jackie had to wrap her arms around his neck and wait for the panic to pass. Some nights the old nightmares returned. Legend pacing the yard, Jackie sitting beside him, both haunted by memories they wished they could forget. Yet amid the exhaustion, there was healing. The first animal therapy program, funded by the new law, opened its doors a month later. Jackie and Legend were honored guests at the ribbon cutting. Dozens of veterans and families met horses and dogs who, like Legend, had been given another chance. Jackie watched as a little girl, once afraid to speak, buried her face in a shaggy service dog's neck and smiled for the first time in months. In Discovery Green, the city commissioned a bronze statue. Jackie in her old cavalry jacket, one hand on Legend's mane, the other holding Zephyr's medal high. The day of the unveiling, hundreds gathered, Frank and Ellie at her side, veterans saluting, children clutching toy horses and dogs. The mayor gave a speech, but it was Jackie's words that echoed longest. True service isn't a duty, it's a bond. We owe it to every soul who's carried our burdens, who stood beside us in the dark, to honor them as family. Let this statue remind us, every act of loyalty leaves a mark that should never be erased. As dusk fell, Jackie stood in the shadow of the statue, Legend grazing quietly nearby. Ellie filmed families meeting rescued animals for the first time. Hugs, tears, hope blossoming like spring after a hard winter. Jackie slipped Zephyr's medal around Legend's neck one last time, whispering, "You brought us all home. You showed the world what love looks like when it fights back." And for the first time in years, Jackie felt light. Less a survivor, more a torchbearer, carrying forward the truth that service and love are worth every scar. The sun was sliding low, spilling gold across the Houston skyline and painting Discovery Green in hues of tangerine and fire. On a gentle hill overlooking the busy city park, a new statue caught the last rays of light. Bronze Jackie, in her battered cavalry jacket, standing tall beside a powerful black horse, one hand outstretched as if leading him home. At the statue's base, a simple inscription read, "Service, loyalty, second chances." Crowds had gathered since the morning for the official unveiling. There were TV trucks, journalists, city officials, rows of veterans in uniform, families with rescued animals, and more than a few children who clung to their parents' hands, gazing up at the shining figures. Legend stood in the shade of a great oak, his coat gleaming and his old wounds now only faint lines, grazing peacefully as if the world had finally given him permission to rest. Jackie walked among the crowd, shaking hands, accepting hugs, and answering questions with a humility that always surprised her. Every time she glanced at the statue, she felt a wave of gratitude, awe, and a bittersweet ache for all that had been lost and found. Ellie filmed interviews and captured candid moments, a child laying flowers at the statue's base, an elderly veteran saluting, families laughing as their adopted dogs and horses played in the grass. Frank moved quietly through it all, his rough edges softened by pride, keeping a watchful eye on Legend. As the afternoon faded, the crowd gathered at the hilltop, waiting for the ceremony's final moment. Jackie stood before the microphone, Legend at her side, with Frank and Ellie flanking her like a small, makeshift family. Jackie glanced at the familiar faces in the crowd, her old cavalry commander, the little boy Legend had saved, even the state representative who'd championed Zephyr's law. Everyone was here because of one horse, one bond, and the ripples they'd sent through the world. Jackie's voice was steady, carrying across the hushed green. Thank you for coming, for believing in this cause, for honoring not just legend, but every service animal and every veteran who's ever come home changed. We gather because in our hearts, we all know service is not a one-way street. It's a partnership built on trust, sacrifice, and love that endures even when the world tries to forget. She paused, letting her gaze sweep the crowd. When I found Legend again, I was lost. I thought I'd failed him. I thought I'd failed myself. But what I learned, what he taught me, is that healing isn't about pretending the scars aren't there. It's about sharing them, about reaching out, even when it's hard, about giving others the same second chance we hope for ourselves. Ellie stepped forward, holding up her camera as Jackie knelt beside Legend. We were both lost, but we found each other, Jackie whispered, not just for the recording, but for Legend alone. He bent his head, breathing in her scent, and Jackie pressed her forehead to his, letting the crowd fall away until it was only the two of them, soldier and horse, bound by every mile and every memory. Frank approached with a shy smile and wrapped his arms around Legend's strong neck. "You saved us both, big guy," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. Tears sparkled in his eyes as he pressed his cheek to Legend's mane, whispering a silent thanks for the friendship that had brought him back from his own edge. As the crowd applauded, Ellie filmed families meeting rescued horses for the first time. Children feeding apples, teenagers learning to brush manes, parents laughing with relief as their anxious kids found comfort in the calm eyes of their new companions. Jackie watched these moments, her heart swelling with something fierce and hopeful. Every smile, every gentle touch was a testament to the lesson Legend had brought home. Healing spreads outward, passed from one wounded soul to another, until the world itself begins to mend. As the ceremony neared its end, Jackie stepped up to the microphone one final time. "If you take anything away from our story, let it be this. Every wounded soul, human or animal, deserves a second chance. Don't walk away when you see pain. Don't let the forgotten stay forgotten. Be their voice. Be their family. And when you can, share your own scars. It's how we all find our way back." She gestured to the statue, its figures aglow in the sunset. "Let this be a beacon, a promise, not just for Legend or me or Frank, but for everyone who's ever carried someone through the dark. Tell this story, adopt, support, and stand up for the ones left behind. Give someone else the second chance you'd wish for yourself." The crowd erupted in applause, some cheering, others wiping away tears. The children released a flock of paper doves that soared up on the wind, swirling above the hill as if carrying Jackie's words far beyond the park. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jackie, Frank, and Ellie walked together to Legend, who stood waiting, calm and sure as always. Jackie stroked his face, feeling the steady thrum of his heart beneath her palm. She slipped Zephyr's medal back around his neck, its silver glinting one last time in the dying light. They turned from the crowd and walked down the hill side by side. Legend's hooves thudded softly against the grass, Ellie's laughter mingling with Frank's low, contented hum. For the first time in years, Jackie felt a peace settle over her. Not an absence of sorrow, but an acceptance. The scars would never fully fade, but neither would the love that had gotten her and Legend this far. Behind them, the statue gleamed, and the hill echoed with the sound of hope renewed. And as night fell over Discovery Green, Jackie looked back once, hand resting on Legend's neck, and smiled, knowing that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Veteran and horse, battle-scarred but unbroken, walking home at last into a world they'd helped to heal.